And the Toronto Argonauts just scored again. We'll keep you up to date on this week's episode of the Rouge, White, and Blue CFL podcast. Hello and welcome to the Rouge, White, and Blue CFL podcast. My name's Oz Davis. I am the co-host of the show, and joining me, as always, is my friend and co-host Joe Pritchard. Joe, how was your Saturday?
Well, Toronto just scored again. Well enough.
I love that joke. Don't you? It's such an old joke, but I love it. That if you can, just catch one of those occasions, it's a great joke. It's corny, but I don't know. I guess you're now allowed to do dad jokes.
Yeah, I've been qualified to do that for almost 7 years now. So.
Right. Half the lifetime of this show. Okay. So we've got, of course, recaps of the games. We're going to talk about next week's games as well in the CFL playoffs. But first off, we should talk about some front office moves because, as is traditional in football and really in most North American sports, immediately after you are eliminated from the postseason, you start making personnel moves. And sure enough, the Calgary Stampeders cleaned a lot of house just after we recorded last episode of the podcast. So let's see. I have the list here. Okay, so gone are special teams coordinator, assistant head coach Mark Killam, defensive coordinator Brent Monson, and defensive line coach Juwan Simpson. I was kind of surprised about that. But head coach G.M. Dickinson is not out. Joe, sort of lukewarm reaction to this at this point?
I wouldn't even say it was a lukewarm reaction. I'd say they made the wrong move.
Okay.
They got rid of...
I mean, it's no longer a hot take.
No,
so I can get your lukewarm reaction.
Sure. They got rid of Killam, who's been thought of as one of the top special teams coaches in the CFL for a long, long time. Mm-hmm. Which, I mean, after I don't know, they're lacking talent. It's not his fault. Mm-hmm. Same thing, Monson, who's been pretty good. Not the greatest. I would understand that move a little bit more. But then also getting rid of defensive line coach Juwan Simpson, who was the heart and soul of your defense for a while and is new to the coaching thing. Like, unless he's a really, really bad at coaching people, you just gutted a decent chunk of your defensive, like, your heart and soul of your defense in that regard. And a guy that could show the way to the new group of players who you're definitely going to be bringing in next year because you didn't have enough talent this year.
Do you think that my Montreal Alouettes could hire Coach Killam as a consultant just for a week? Because Toronto just kills us on special teams.
I hope so. That'd be great.
I mean, we can certainly. You are correct. Yes, the Stamps are bereft of talent right now, outside of maybe Reggie.
If they would have came through last week and said, "Hey, we're making big changes in our scouting department and keeping Dickinson, sure, all for it.
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
not entirely sold that Dickinson is the problem. Him
Okay.
wearing two hats might be a problem,
Okay.
but
Right.
at the same time, if it would have been a change to scouting where they've had trouble bringing in the talent that they used to, ever since they really made the change from Hufnagel to Dickinson running the show, it's been just it feels like their talent level goes down each and every year.
Mhm. You mean running the whole show,
Right,
right?
right.
Because there was a period where Huffnagel was GMing and Dickinson was coaching.
Mhm. I mean, even after Hufnagel left coaching, there's been a steady decline, but the decline seemed to get worse as soon as Hufnagel was no longer
Right.
in charge.
Right. When he retired from
Right,
operations. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah. That's when you saw the real decline. Um, right. Well, here's a crazy theory, and I probably got this from, I believe, Bill Simmons. But I mean, he
Which,
said
yes,
this.
that is crazy then. Yep.
Well, well, no, actually, it makes a lot of sense. And I've been noticing this for 15 years. I think Bill Parcells was really the last one to do it well. But the thing is, hey, maybe, just maybe, being a head coach and being a GM are both full-time jobs. Like,
Yeah,
they,
realistic. If you're managing a salary cap too, what you really need is cohesion
yes.
between your GM and your head coach. You need to have the same philosophy. Bill
Mm,
Parcells was one of the first that advocated for being able to do both. He
right,
like grocery shopping.
right,
GM is buying Italian and you're trying to make Mexican, it's a problem, right?
right,
That's the way
right,
he would present it. Sure, but instead of having one person do both jobs, especially in a salary cap era where you have to do more than just bring in talent, you have to manage the talent and manage the
right,
salary cap. You really
right,
need somebody doing that as a full time job.
right.
So you want to hire somebody
Even in
that
the CFL.
you want to hire a GM that knows what they want out of a head coach and has the same philosophy.
Mhm.
Doing both doesn't seem to work all the time or all that well.
Well, I mean, you end up giving one of those two the short shrift, right? Because the
Right.
truth is, I mean, head coaching is not a full-time job. It's like a 60, 70 hour a week job for some of these guys that are fanatical about it. And for example, we just saw this with Chris
Even more
Jones.
too. Yeah.
Chris Chris Jones loved the GMing aspect of the job, but his coaching suffered for it. I mean, you don't go on 0-7 runs because you're, coaching too much.
No, and his team was making
you know?
fundamental mistakes at an important
Right,
part of the
right,
game, and it
exactly.
was a consistent thing.
hmm 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 And maybe this is what's happening with Dickinson. One of these two things he's probably spending a disproportionate amount of time with when both of them require 100% of your attention. So not sure that's a great idea. If Calgary has one more season like this, though, I think anything is possible. I think anything goes at that point, right?
Especially since they have an ownership group that seems disinterested.
Mm-hmm.
They have the worst stadium situation in the CFL.
Mm-hmm.
They need to be better than other teams are in the aspects of scouting and GMing and coaching to make up for those disadvantages. And if you're asking one person to be better than two people in other places like Winnipeg, in other places like even Saskatchewan right now is doing a good job, uh, you're going to be in trouble.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. How about this one? And I believe actually you drew my attention to this move
Mm-hmm.
first. You tweeted or you Facebooked or you something about some possible flirtation between the Elks and a Hamilton Tiger Cats GM. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the rumor is anyway that Edmonton is asking permission for to talk to Ticats GM Ed Hervey.
Oh, that's been
which
reported
makes
in legitimate legacy newspapers.
well, it makes
So yeah.
perfect sense though.
Uh-huh.
They brought in a new president in Chris Morris, who's been
Right.
running U of A for the last what 10, 11 years, I want to say, and he took a college program that was basically at rock bottom and made them into
Mhm.
at least
Mhm.
respectable.
Right.
He's also a former Edmonton Eskimo player,
Hmm.
great cup winner. He's the kind of guy that you wanted to see in Edmonton to rebuild what's been just shattered, right? There's just a lack of trust from the fan base. There's a new owner because simply the old community way wasn't going to work anymore with the fan base and the way that the fan base is not responding to what's going on. So they needed money. So they have a new owner now. They have a new president that they're hoping will bring back some of the old ways in Edmonton. And it makes perfect sense that they would reach out to a former Edmonton GM to see if he can come back in and rebuild it. A former Edmonton GM that was a Grey Cup winner in Edmonton too, that knows how to win in Edmonton, has won in Edmonton as a GM, and got fired by the former president because winning wasn't enough. I mean, what was that? 2016 or 2017? I want to say maybe yeah, 20. I want to say 2017. It might have been. It's somewhere in that range.
Right.
But as soon as that press conference happened, my Edmonton friends were just like, "This is the worst," and they didn't even know how bad it was going to get.
Oh yeah.
Ever since then, they've been in a tailspin. So
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
they're trying to rebuild what made Edmonton Edmonton, and that's a perfectly reasonable first step to make. Is to have a president and a GM that have been there when Edmonton was winning.
And
Might as well start there.
do you realize that Edmonton has by far the longest streak of being in the playoffs since the formation of the CFL? They did
Yeah,
something like 30, how many years is it? 35? 35
yeah.
years?
It was,
Between the 80s
it,
and the teens?
yeah, and I think it was what 06 when they missed for the first time in a long time.
Yeah, and then after that, they made it again like 7, 8 years in a row before bottoming out.
Right. They even
So,
won a Grey Cup after
I
that.
mean, this
Right.
is
2015.
yes, yeah, with Riley, with Mike Riley as quarterback.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. This is literally one of the storied franchises of the CFL. Since the CFL's formation, this team is the Yankees, and yet they've been on this really, this tailspin, graveyard spiral, one might say, for 7, 8 seasons. But you got to figure things are turning around now. Okay, I'm going to ask you this one first. You seemed very stoked to talk about this. Why is this such a good story for you?
It's
Why are you so
simply
positive?
because Edmonton being in this shape isn't good for the league. There's
Okay.
always
Yeah.
going to be two or three franchises that are struggling at the gate, on the field, what have you. Usually one leads to the other, and it takes a long time to rebuild the gate after you've gotten back on your feet off the field. It's going to take a while to rebuild Edmonton, but it'd be nice to have a pillar franchise of the league be that pillar again, even if it means they go 10-8 next year, 11-7 the next year, and like build toward being great again. It'd be nice to see the fan base respond to that and seeing that the problems of the past 5, 6, 7 years are in the rearview mirror. And I think once you see that, the fan base will respond back again. We've rehashed a million times why the Edmonton fan base has gone backwards, has faded away. We don't need to get into all that again. But you've seen in BC, you've seen in other places, winning cures everything. So if they can stop missing the playoffs, if they can stop starting 0-7, that fan base is going to respond a lot faster than what the doubters will have you believe.
Okay, now let me get this straight, Joe. You're saying make Edmonton football great again?
I wouldn't put it in those terms, but at the same time, they need to get good again for one.
Okay.
Let's
All
let's
right.
make that step.
Make
Let's make it
Edmonton
so that
good
their
again.
let's make it so that their season doesn't start on Labor Day, like Hamilton
Okay.
and Edmonton have shown over the past few years. That doesn't quite work well. Let's get them to be feared again. That would help.
Mhm.
Yeah, nobody looks at the schedule right now and goes, Edmonton? Ooh, that might be a tough one. Let's get it. Let's get it again. Let's get it to where people are going. Let's circle that one because that's a big day for us.
Mhm.
Let's circle that one. It's a big day for us, and not be from Calgary.
Mhm. 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 Yeah, again, it feels like, again, for most of my football fandom, I mean, they've been the Yankees. They're in contention every year. They're often in the Grey Cup. They've won off a few. They've run off a few dynastic runs, in this term. Uh, and it's just, and when we started, they were champs. Right? They were
Yeah,
on their way to their last championship when we started this show. I'm
this
just
show's
not.
old enough to have remembered Edmonton as champions, so
Yeah.
we've been around for a while,
I'm just not. I'm just not accustomed to them being the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
right?
So, okay. My question is, does this increase the possibility of bringing Bo over?
I would say,
Okay.
and that would be an interesting situation, now wouldn't it be?
Right.
On the other hand, whoever the GM is going to have to make a decision on Trey
Mhm.
Ford.
Right.
Like I said last week, and like I've been saying all year, the yo-yo thing that they've been doing with him ain't gonna fly at year three. They either gotta they
Yeah.
either gotta rally around him and make him the guy, and don't put anybody in front of him for any reason. If you're bringing in a veteran, it's clear that they're the backup and they're going to be the backup unless Trey is hurt. Or they have to make a change. They can't have him sit on the bench for half the season again. Because if that happens, you're going to continue to alienate the fan base. Moving on from him is going to hurt the fan base to begin with. So if you move on from him, you better be right and they better win right out of the gate because that's going to hurt you as well. Really, I think the best thing they could do is go, Trey, you're the guy. Here's your veteran
Really?
backup.
Okay.
And you have to at least play it out for a season or two
Okay.
because you have to give the fan base a reason to go, okay, it's fine. We can move on now. Because you've been teasing him for so long. They're ready for him to be the guy. Every time he's on the field, the team wins. So get him out there, show him, and if they end up falling short again, you can make the change to your veteran backup. But then at that point, you'd have given him a legit chance. You can't do it in week 3. You have to do it at like week 11, 12 when you're 4-7, if that's what happens.
Right.
Like you have to give him runway
Right.
to say you're the guy. Unless something dramatically terrible happens, this is you're the guy we're running with. Because if you don't, the fan base isn't going to give you any credit for that. You have
I.
to
I. I.
because you're in such a tenuous situation with your fan base. You kind of have to cater to them a little bit. You have to say, "Come watch us. We're exciting. We're giving
Mm,
you the quarterback you want."
mhm,
Unless you know for sure he is not your franchise,
mhm.
you got to give him a shot.
So you couldn't bring Bo in.
I don't think
That
you
wouldn't
can.
be enough, especially
Um,
if
if
I
you
were playing a sim game, if I were
Mhm,
playing, CFL Madden, if such a thing existed, or
mhm.
a tabletop or whatever, I would like to see a blockbuster trade, right? For Trey Ford. Sell high, right?
If you
Sell
do
high on
that,
him. If you can
you
get a
had better
defensive player
be right.
or an offensive lineman, I mean, forget draft picks. No, no, not in the CFL. No, 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 no. Screw draft picks. You want a quality defensive player or a quality lineman. They have so many weapons on offense right now. And Bo, especially in the last half of the season, crushed it. I mean, he ended up being Hamilton's, nominee. He ended up being the only quarterback this year nominated for the MLP award. Now, I know you don't like MLP awards, but that particular fact is quite the barometer of both Bo's standing. Well, actually, of both Bo and his standing in the CFL. I mean, this guy is a franchise quarterback, at
Mhm.
least for a couple more years, probably. And
The
again,
only
there's so
two
many
names,
weapons in Edmonton.
the only two names you could possibly try this with is Bo or VA.
Hmm.
That's it.
Oh, I don't know.
And
We'll
and
talk
you
about
had
Adams
better
momentarily.
be right.
Hmm.
Because if you're not right, you've lost the fan base on your first shot.
Hmm. Well, don't you think this new owner will be in touch with the fan base?
He
I mean,
will. And
he
I think
is
that's
a
why they
lifelong fan.
mhm. I think
So,
that's why whoever they have as GM, whether it's Hervey or whether G Roy gets a shot at this,
okay.
I think they're going to be laying down heavily to go. Trey, give him a shot.
Hmm. Okay. Okay.
I'm not
Okay.
going to say that Larry Thompson's going to meddle. I'm going to say that if you look at the dynamic of the situation, you don't want to screw around with that fan base right now because it's at its low ebb. It could go lower, I mean, for sure, but this is where you want to stop and go, okay, this is as low as we're going. We're going to rebuild this fan base. We have to give them something of what they want. So it's either Trey or it better be an MOP, and he better play as an MOP this next year. Those are your only two options, unless you. Those are the only two options that work. Anything else is a complete failure, and you're going to see how low that fan base can go.
Maybe, maybe. But I'll tell you what. I mean, look, my fan base, I guess,
Mhm.
is Montreal. Okay. That is the most win dependent fan base in this league. But in other words, the more we win, the more fans we get. Period. Period.
That's for
Since
everybody.
right, since the 80s. Yes, except for Toronto. There's not a damn thing Toronto can do. And there are some, I would argue that there are some teams that will draw pretty much no matter what. Although those are getting rarer now that Saskatchewan can't sell out their massively overpriced, I should say, massive and overpriced stadium.
Yeah,
Even,
you have to keep connected with your fan base,
right,
even in places like Saskatchewan where the fan
right,
base is built in.
right. They took it for
Because
granted. They took it for granted
Same
almost
thing,
anywhere.
same thing, and I apologize for bringing hockey into the mix. Same thing's happening in Winnipeg with the Jets too. They're playing really, really well. They're not selling out because the fan base was taken for granted for so long. Same thing's happening in Regina. You can't, you cannot take your fan base for granted. That's kind of the point I'm also trying to make in Edmonton is that they've been burned for so long. You have to cater to them. You have to bring them back somehow.
It's no problem. It's no problem bringing in hockey. I just compared the '80s Elks to the 1950s New York Yankees. So
Mm.
no problem.
I know, but
No
Americans talking hockey, that's a bad idea.
problem.
When our base is Canadian listeners, right?
Yeah. Okay. Stick with baseball. On the other hand.
Huh.
Okay. So for this show. Okay. Right. All right. Let's go into last week. I shouldn't say last week. Yesterday's games, right? As we're recording this on Sunday night. What is it now? It's the 3rd of November. Um, right. Let's get into this. Okay. Toronto Argonauts have not just scored again. However, they did score 58 points against Hamilton Tiger Cats. 38.
No. Well,
Sorry.
I mean, that's probably why they scored 58 is they were playing against Hamilton because I don't think Hamilton showed up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Jesus. I am losing my mind. Here I am. I'm trying to transition from teaching like 5 straight hours of English. All right. So Toronto Argonauts 58, Ottawa Redblacks, of course, 28. I'm surprised they didn't
38.
go Ottawa Renegades there. Uh, all right, Montreal Concords. All right, so um, this game tied. No, here's why I said that. This game tied the all-time mark in the modern CFL era for a playoff game. which was, what was it, 52-44, that overtime game
Yep.
between the Ticats and the Alouettes.
Hmm.
But that was overtime. That was overtime. And the Ticats only had 52 in that game. So I was trying to remember this, Joe. I did not really have the time or the energy to look for this. But do you remember the last time a team threatened 60 in the CFL in any game? It's been a while. I don't know if we've seen it on this show.
I saw
58's a
in the
lot.
last couple of. I feel like there was a 62-7 while we were here.
Oh, you may be right. You may be
Yeah.
right.
I'm
Okay.
drawing a blank as to who it was and what the situation was, but it was a team that was
Yeah.
far superior to their opponent and
Yeah.
played like it.
Okay. Yeah, that might have been against one of those really poor Red Blacks teams recently. Okay. I'll see if I can't dig for that and find it for next week. Um, what a crazy game. And okay, what was your gut feeling after this game? Would you rather be terrified of the Toronto Argonauts, or would you rather discuss some rather questionable calls by Bob Dice? What do you think?
I'd rather be terrified of Toronto because Bob Dyke was trying to keep his
Okay.
team, was
Okay.
trying to keep things from getting out of hand. How about that?
Uh huh. Uh huh.
Um, and the game plan was to hold the ball, play ball control.
Okay.
Worked for the first half.
Sure. Sure.
It's just their
Well,
defense couldn't stop a thing in the second half. Really didn't
well,
stop
yeah.
much in the first either, but they held the ball long enough to make it look a lot better, right?
Well, in the first half, they went toe to toe,
Yeah.
right? I mean, the Red Blacks, like, I mean, the Argos could score quickly. They could score like lightning, which is what really terrifies me, is the big play capability of this team. That's what's the scary thing. I mean, they talked about this, right? In the first quarter, about the time of possession was 11 and 3/4 to 3 1/4 on
Hmm.
the favor of Ottawa, right? Ottawa's controlling the ball. They weren't turning it over. Da 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 da. They go up 13-3, and then bam, one play is 13-10. Right? They keep exchanging things like this. Like for example, there was one point when Toronto. I even have it down here. Oh no, it was Toronto first. Yeah, Jordan Williams just came in and destroyed Drew Brown. But then on the very next drive, Lorenzo Malden comes in and just creamed Chad Kelly. I mean, he was on his knees after that one. I mean, stuff like this. I mean, again, Ottawa was just going toe to toe. They were set to take a 23-17 lead in the half when Coach Dice made this very strange call to do this sort of bizarre, almost onside kick play,
No,
which
it was a squib. It was just done very, very
just
poorly.
poorly executed. Okay,
Poorly
so
executed. Yep.
I can't blame Dice for that, huh?
Nope.
I don't understand why they called that at all. Just kick it off. I mean, what was
Well, you got Janarian Grant back there, right? I mean,
okay?
that's a tide
All
shifter
right.
if that happens.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
your kicker has to not hit the Toronto up back with the dang ball or put it right in his hands, right?
Mm-hmm. 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 No one would think. Yeah. I mean,
Like the
not
field's pretty wide, and you only got 5 guys on the front line. Like, miss them.
right.
But the
Okay.
funny thing is, it's not the first squib kick that's been botched in the CFL this year, right? I mean,
Right.
Edmonton fans could tell you about one, right?
Yep.
Might
Yep.
have led to
Yep.
Chris
Yep.
Jones being shoved out of town. They're probably happy about that now, but day of, I'm sure they weren't.
right. Exactly. Exactly. Okay. So then Liam Hilarahu, who hasn't missed an easy one in forever, made a difficult one. So it's 23-20 going into half. Toronto had run 3 times in the first half. 3 design runs in the first half. Then they come out here in the second half. Okay. Ready for this? Here are their possessions. This is how insane Toronto was in the second half. All right. Touchdown, touchdown, punt. touchdown field goal, defense gets a pick six, defense gets a pick six, kneel down. Right? I mean,
Mhm.
there was a stretch of about 5 minutes where the Red Blacks were outscored 14-6, and the Argos quarterback hadn't taken a snap. I mean, just insane. Just complete domination. I mean, it really irked me because it felt like Toronto is just flipping a switch in these games. Again, they didn't even bother to run the ball in the first half. It's like they're just playing with these guys. Oh my God, I'm terrified, Joe. Terrified. I'm gonna have a nightmare.
Difference is your team has a defense.
That's true. That's true. That's true. However, as we'll talk about later on, the Alouettes haven't done very well defensively against these Argos this season. So, okay. Again, I also had the question of, and I mean, maybe he sensed it was already out of hand, okay? Argos are up 41-26 with about 8 minutes left. Okay, and the Red Blacks make it 41-32. Why are you going for two?
Because, and I will defend this, I
Okay,
liked the call.
okay, why?
Because then you know if you succeed, you're within 7.
Okay,
If you fail,
right,
it's a 9-point game, and you
right,
know you need 2 scores at that point. Instead of you kick the point, it's 41-33.
okay.
You think it's a one possession game, but what happens if you miss the 2 point the next time? Now it's a 2 possession game. I would rather know with 5 minutes to go if it's a 2 possession game than find out with 30 seconds to go it was a 2 possession game.
8 minutes actually, 8 minutes.
Well,
So
even so,
your
I mean
argument's
that's
even more solid,
right.
if that's
I'd
your
rather
argument.
know then
I guess.
than I
Yes.
would if I get the ball back with 3 minutes left after the other team's had the ball, kill clock, punted it. I'd rather know if I got to go crazy right away and try to score twice,
Mhm.
or if 2.5 minutes getting down the field and scoring a touchdown ends up not being enough, right?
Yeah, but your defense isn't stopping anything,
Sure, but I
right?
have to
So
plan. I have to plan as if they will. Otherwise,
okay, okay, yeah, but if that's by that token, I mean, what about the Rouge? Right, you can always make up that second point in other ways.
yeah. But if they
Yeah.
know I need 1 point, they're going to make it very, very hard for me to
Yeah.
stop.
Okay.
Not
Fair,
impossible. Not
fair enough.
impossible, but
Yeah. No, fair enough. No, fair enough. Okay. Okay. All right. I guess I can see your argument. I don't know. I
right.
don't know.
And there's two schools of thought about that. It seems like the tide is shifting toward my point of view on this, but for a long time it was get it to be a one score game
Hmm. Hmm.
or get it so you can tie with 8 and then
Hmm.
see where it goes, which I hated because sometimes you'd find out I needed 2 scores and I played for
Nope.
one. Huh?
Exactly. Exactly. Okay. All right. Fair enough. Fair enough. I'll take that. Okay. You talked me down from that. I don't know. I guess I've got PTSD because I got burned along with a lot of other betters last week when the Raiders were down by what was it? They were down by 8 or something, and they decided to kick the field goal. So you still need a touchdown, but it completely ruined anybody who had bet Rams -6. So so I guess I still have PTSD from that. It's just like just take the extra point. Don't mess with it. All right. So,
One of those good reasons not to bet on football, right?
oh yeah, of course, of course, of
Ah,
course. You hate yourself for when you bet when that happens. You hate yourself for betting football when that stuff happens. Okay. Anyway, all right. Let's go on then. In the West, we had Saskatchewan Roughriders 28, BC Lions 19. It was a good week for chalk. It was a good week for the home teams. Um, should we accent the positive again here, Joe?
in what sense?
Okay, well, we can either talk nice things about the Riders, who looked, I thought, really, really good,
Mhm.
or we could discuss the BC Lions problems? Question mark.
Yes to
What do you?
both. I mean, the Riders played
Oh,
the game they needed to play.
yeah, The Riders look really good. I
Yep.
thought they
I
looked
mean,
really good.
they're not going to put up 56 points against or 58 or
Oh,
60 points against anybody probably,
no.
but they're a good solid team.
Yep. Yep.
They if they play their game, it's hard to beat them.
Mhm. Well, they showed all their strengths, and they also showed their depth.
Hmm.
Because at a couple points in this game, when Schaefer Baker went out, that shook my confidence in these Riders a little bit. And even more critically, when the starting center, Trevor Reed, went out, that got me concerned. What I did not know at the time was coming in was Peter Godbert, who, last season was the starter for the Riders at this position. He was Pro Football Focus's #1 center in the CFL last
Yeah,
year.
and they've been
So
dealing with injuries on that line and shuffling that
right,
line all year,
right,
and they've
right,
been game planning as if they had to deal with problems there.
right.
So they've been doing a good job of dealing with the problems.
Yeah,
Even
Godbert was
during
ready to come in. It was nice to have a guy like that coming in off the
even
bench.
during their losing streak,
Mhm.
looking back, they were playing tight games. They were playing the Bombers real well on Labor Day
Yep,
and the Banjo Bowl. Those were tight games.
yep,
The Bombers came out ahead,
yep.
but those were both one play either way makes it happen for them. So
Oh yeah, we'll talk about that again later on. Trevor Harris was also really excellent in both of those games too, by the way,
yeah, he's
or at least the
Trevor
two games.
Harris. Trevor Harris will make sure you have a chance.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. Especially this season, he's been even more solid than he has in the past with these riders. Um, I talking of Harris, actually, let's go on to that because Harris again, he's leading an offense which is not very high powered, but getting the job done. I
Right.
mean, he was 26 of 33 for 279, one touchdown and zero picks. Great, can't complain about that. Emelis was pretty awesome, 9 catches for 106 yards. Um, Ouellette is back. Ouellette looks like it's week 4.
Which
All of
for
a
him
sudden,
it pretty much is.
yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah, basically. Basically. I mean, he came out gangbusters in the first 3 weeks of the season and then just fell off the old fantasy football cliff and has come back in recent weeks. And woo, he is in playoff shape, let's say. I thought, too, that the defense was fantastic. Again, this season, the Riders have gotten quite the reputation for both running defense and creating turnovers. They were by far #1 in turnover differential this season. And in this game, William Standback, 7 carries for 27 yards. The whole team had 11 carries for 41 yards,
Mhm.
right?
They
So,
abandoned the run game
yep.
when they get
And
behind.
you know what that means, Joe? You know what
Mhm.
that means?
Yep.
That it's all on Vernon Adams to create.
Mhm.
And create he did. He created a bit of a mess, um, forcing passes, 3 bad picks, inopportune times, all 3. A couple more that were forced in there and could have been picked off as well. I mean, I was just shocked. Okay, here again, I'm calling out coaches again. I was shocked. They saw what was happening. Okay. They knew, first of all, going into the game, how good this Riders run defense was. Okay. They knew that. They also should have known that, okay, Vernon Adams may be flavor of the month in BC right now, but you must know his past history of being intensely volatile, often for the worse. Right? Okay, you've got to know that. Now, at halftime, the Riders are just smoking your run game, right? You have no chance running the ball at all. So what do? Your game plan in the second half is for Vernon to improvise? That's the plan? I mean, jeez. I mean, it's not like I had a bet on this game or anything, but I was really frustrated with just the lack of answers BC had here. I mean, what happened to the offense that ran up 35 points against the Riders in week 6? What happened to this? Vernon was a quarterback. What happened? I mean, like, they had them solved earlier this season. There's no evidence. I mean, I don't even know what happened to this offense, Joe. After the bye, this everything disappeared. This offense just fell off a cliff. I
Nope.
mean,
And they've been spending 3 months trying to find answers and really didn't find much.
Jesus. Nope. And this game was evidence of that. I mean, that's the answer is Vernon Adams for the past 2 weeks. It's just.
Yep. And I want to make clear I'm not advocating for personnel changes in BC.
Mhm.
At the same time, coming this far short of expectations in a Grey Cup year, especially after all of the promotion early on, all the energy the team had in the first weeks of the season, this kind of ending from that is what tends to cost people jobs.
Well, again, I think there's an opportunity here to sell maybe Vernon high. Sell high. Sell high. You know?
Yeah,
Um,
problem being is everybody else knows you have to make a move too, right?
that's true. That's true. So the other side is setting the price.
Mhm.
But wow, they're gonna have to make a decision in BC. I mean, again, maybe they should do a platoon like in the old days of the
No,
CFL.
you can't have that much money invested in quarterbacks over the long term.
Yeah,
This
that's true. That's true.
made sense. The decision they made on Nathan Rourke in what was that, August? Made sense. But we
Sure.
also knew it was a short term solution to have both of them on the roster, right?
Mhm.
And you're not going to get rid of the hometown kid that's going to count as a Canadian, who you're going to have a full off season with, as opposed to, and younger too,
Mhm.
as opposed to the veteran you had there to replace him when he left.
Mhm.
No,
Wow. Visualize Vernon Adams in Hamilton.
which has happened before.
Wow. Wow. That would be wow. So yeah, interesting times in over there in BC, I'm sure.
No, I
Because
would far rather right now, if you told me I could go forward as an Ottawa Red Blacks fan or go forward as a BC Lions fan, I would say Ottawa's got the trajectory for the next 5 years and going in the right direction as opposed to BC.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. Well, I mean, you feel like okay, you see these windows in football, right?
Mm-hmm.
This happens, right? Football is a highly complex game. You need that right combination of parts. You have like 51 guys. You want like 34 of them to be playing peak, right? In order to have like a couple, three good years. And that's your window for most teams. All right. We're not talking about the Patriots. We're not talking about, certain iterations of the Stampeders or whatever. Okay. We're not talking about that. We're talking about, we're talking about these normal teams. And sometimes you don't get to the championship.
Nope.
Sometimes you just don't. Sometimes you miss your opportunities. I mean, look at Chris Jones. There was that one year where Chris Jones was a couple of plays away from being in the Grey Cup with the Riders. Okay, didn't make it. It doesn't mean he gets another chance. Maybe that's the end of the window for that team, and that's the thing. BC's window might be closing. We'll see what kind of movement they have at the receiver position. But their leading receiver in this game was Javon Cotoy, who created a lot, after the catch. Right. So, apparently BC has a lot of cards to draw from here at that wide receiver position. So we'll see what kind of
So
core they
much
have next year,
talent
too.
there. And
Right.
different guys would explode at different times, but they just can never find a
Right.
consistent way of making that offense move after what, August 1st?
Well, yeah. See that I didn't think you were going to end it that way because they're saying they could never find a way. They did for like 6 weeks,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden the bye week came, and I guess it just took away all that energy, that momentum, like what they were not thinking about. They started thinking about. I don't know. I don't know what happened there.
Or
Somebody,
somebody or one team watched the film, figured out a way to stop them. Everybody else watched the same film of the team stopping them and went, "Oh, that's the answer."
yeah, I'm trying to think who they drew out of that bye. Who do they have in week 8? Was it
I know
Winnipeg?
Winnipeg played them like 2
Uh,
times in 3 weeks, I think, back to
yeah,
back for Winnipeg too, because they had a bye in there, if I'm not mistaken, and they dominated the
Kansas.
offense. They made it so that the offense wasn't that much of a factor.
All right, let's take a look at this. Yes. Okay. So they went into the bye. Actually, they went in at, to the bye after losing last second to Calgary, right? So that was the loss. And then coming out, yep, Winnipeg Blue Bombers 25 to nothing. Yep. That might have been it. Your Bombers broke them. They broke the Lions.
And I remember sitting there in August going, BC had a chance to put the Bombers away and
Yep.
failed. I did
Yep.
not think that
Yep.
meant that BC was going to crater like they did.
Yep. And that the Bombers were going to
Well,
peak like they did.
no,
Because that's week 9. That's right about when they were taking off.
no, I had that being a horse race, and Winnipeg was still behind by a couple games at that point, but Winnipeg had a chance at that point.
Okay. Okay. Right. Yeah. Week 9. Yeah. So Winnipeg would have been about 2 and would have been about what 4 and 5 at that point. No.
They
No.
were 2-6 at one point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's when they started coming back.
Mhm.
25 nothing. Yep. You may be right because right after that it's 33-16 at Edmonton. It's 20 to 11 at home versus Winnipeg. Yeah, 2 games against Winnipeg, 11 points. How about that?
Mhm.
27 points in 3 weeks. And then 34-27 against Ottawa. So yeah, you may be right. You may be right. That might have been it. The one game Winnipeg gave everybody a blueprint on how to beat these guys. Of course, not everybody has the talent on defense that Winnipeg has. Um, okay, I all right. Let's go to. Should we put a bow on that, Joe? You want to
Yeah,
talk next? Yeah, let's talk
let's
next
get to
round of
next
the
week.
playoffs. Okay, first, I should give a shout out to our sponsor. That's royalretros.com. Royal Retros is a great online shop to get jerseys, caps, t shirts, baseball shirts, all kinds of nice gear uh, representing defunct teams and defunct leagues. This is some really fantastic stuff from all sorts of leagues like the ABA, the WHA, the Negro Leagues in baseball, and even some old CFL stuff, including Montreal Concords gear and Ottawa Renegades gear. Really interesting stuff there, along, of course, with all the old CFL USA teams, Sacramento Gold Miners, and of course, the classic Baltimore Stallions or CFL Colts or Baltimore CFL football team. I think they were called at one point. Lots of nice gear from them. So go to royalretros.com and as a listener to the show, enter the promo code RWBCFL for 10% off. For 10% off. RWBCFL at royalretros.com. It's a great shop. Christmas is coming. Think about that for your Christmas gifts. RoyalRetros.com, RWBCFL at checkout. Joe, Joe, we're going to get to the regular games in just a second, but I would like to ask your indulgence. Will you give me the mic for a minute and a half or so? 2
Go
minutes?
for it. Go for
Okay.
it.
I don't know. I don't think you're going to be as enthusiastic once I start. Okay. But this is the Rouge, White, and Blue CFL podcast. We are a podcast talking about Canadian football by Americans. Okay. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. Okay. There is in America an election coming up. And let me tell you, I teach students here in Hungary. I teach students from all over the world. I teach a lot of students from Vietnam these days. I teach a lot of students from Ukraine these days. They are watching this election too. And I just want to say this, okay? Not talking politics. I don't want to, let's forget all the various sexual improprieties of these two major candidates, all that stuff. All right. I want to say this too. I am no fan of Kamala Harris. I vote third party. But anybody, my age, maybe Joe's age, but definitely my age, anybody my age that is a football fan, I don't understand how you can vote for the guy who was at least the architect of killing the United States Football League, one of the greatest sports, I don't know what you want to call it, phenomena of my lifetime. The USFL, Joe doesn't even know. Joe is one of the biggest fans of the USFL I know that wasn't personally witnessing this when it was going down. But again, watch the documentary, watch the 30 for 30 documentary entitled Small Potatoes. Seriously, if you think it's not important, I think it is. The USFL was something that was a lot of fun and it was very interesting and it was even rebellious against the standing order of the NFL, which was then as now a big beast that wasn't really interested in player rights or issues. I just don't see how you can vote for a guy like this. That's all I wanted to say. We've done the Rouge, White, and Blue has existed now through 3 presidential elections, all 3 involving this guy, and I've never said anything about that. All right, but seriously, this blows my mind. Generation X, what are you thinking? Seriously, USFL forever. Okay, Joe. At least you can agree with that last sentiment. I don't know if how much of that you agree with, but at least you can buy USFL forever. Hashtag USFL forever. Okay, let's talk some football. All right, rant over. All right, Montreal Alouettes hosting the suddenly terrifying Toronto Argonauts. All right, Eastern Championship game. Feels like a repeat of last year with the roles reversed. All right. Let's see. Here's what I got. In the first meeting, it's week 4. Montreal 30-20. Week 6, Toronto spanked us 37-18. That was the first loss of the year for the Alouettes. Week 17 at Toronto, much more indicative of where these teams are now. Montreal loses 37-31. Okay. So, bit concerned. Montreal has a very famed defense. Tyrese Beverett was named our own most outstanding player for the team. However, I mean, just looking at those 3 numbers, the defense has allowed 31 points per game against the Alouettes against the Argonauts this season. On top of that, Montreal is closing the year with a 1-3 run and a 2-4-1 run. But if it wasn't for the wrath of God on that punt in week 21 against Winnipeg, that might be 2-2 and 3-3-1, which sounds a little bit better. But
and that had nothing to do with you guys. That was just setting everything right.
Okay. Just a bit of a tangent, Joe. Just a bit of a tangent, because a lot of people claimed, I think even they said it on TSN, a lot of people claim that God is a Bombers fan, a Winnipeg Blue Bombers fan. But I wanted to ask you this. Is it more likely that God is a Winnipeg Blue Bombers fan or that he just hates the Riders?
I think it might be more of the second, just because it just feels like the strangest things keep the Riders from getting further than they have.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Right, like the Chris Jones season we were just talking about. They almost won the East.
I could tell you in detail how that ended, but I won't.
Okay. All right. So, in any case, okay. So, I don't know. I wanted to ask you because I wanted to ask what you thought would be the key matchup in this game. I'm basically just looking for keys to the Montreal victory here. I was
Okay.
going to say that the key matchup is Chad Kelly against the defensive fronts. But the thing is, I felt like that in week 17,
the defense at least had Kelly figured out. I mean, 19 of 30, 287 yards, and one interception versus zero touchdowns. I mean, that's not what Kelly has been doing the second half of this season. Um, the in that game, in fact, they scored 37 points and they only had two touchdowns, both on the ground by the offense. Friggin' Gila Rahu had about 27,000 field goals in this game. You know, so I almost feel like the key matchup might be on special teams. I mean, especially since Deontay McMahon. Yeah, Deontay McMahon. He was killing us with the returns in that game too. So I don't know what are the keys to victory in this game for the Owls and the Argos for you, Joe?
Get to Chad Kelly.
It's all about Kelly.
I think so. Because I think the teams are evenly matched, really. I mean, the Argos got better with Kelly. Montreal's seen Kelly once this year because they played 2 games before Kelly came back.
Right.
They've gotten one look at him against their team. They've got a chance now to tailor their attack after seeing what they were able to do against Kelly the first time around. And they're going to be pretty darn healthy on the offensive side of the ball, too. I think you're in a better position than you faced them in Week 17, and you have much more to play for. Mm-hmm. And you're at home.
Okay. Yeah, but again, I don't think that
if you get them early, he'll spiral. That's hard to do. I'm not telling you that's easy, but you saw what happened last year, right?
Yeah.
Make him think he's got to win the game by himself, and you're going to win.
Yeah. See, we've been pretty successful against Kelly. I mean, even in Week 21 of last season, we've played pretty well against Kelly and the Argonauts. As far as just the passing game, it's just the other stuff that bothers me. I don't think Kadeem Carey is going to be as much of a threat either as he was against many other teams this season. But I don't know. After seeing this game last week against the Red Blacks and seeing them recently, again, it's that quick strike capability. It's that big play stuff.
I'm less
really
concerned about your team giving up that kind of big strike than I am Ottawa would be, right?
Well, yeah.
And if they're going for that, if they're going for the quick strikes, they're giving you an opportunity to take the ball away.
Yes, and that's one of the nice things about the Alouettes defense is that, I mean, we were one of only 2 teams this season with a positive turnover differential. We were the only team. Actually, I think Winnipeg might have been up there too by season's end. So we were one of 3 teams, and then we were only one of 2 teams again with the Riders to have more interceptions than interceptions generated. So, in that respect, yeah, Montreal need not fear the big play as much. Let's just hope the secondary is well prepared. So I'm going to say, because there's no way I'm going to choose Toronto to win this game. However, I tell you, and I'm not going to bet on it either. However, if I were betting it, I tell you right now, I would bet on Montreal to win and take Toronto to cover the line, which is only going to be about 2.5 or 3. So I'm going to take as my final score, let's say Toronto scores a little bit less this time. We're going to go 27-25 Montreal.
Yep, make them work for it.
You like Montreal in this game. So you're taking the Owls.
Because I feel like they're steadier. I'm going to take the less explosive team when it's this close, because that explosion can go both ways. If you don't have it, it's going to be harder to struggle for you. I'm not going to say that they don't have the capability of winning a struggle against Montreal, but I'm not going to go ahead and say I think it's more likely that they would win a struggle game. That's what Montreal's going to make this. They're not going to give them the easy stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the Owls might have had a chance in that Week 17 game, if not for a really bad flagrant foul penalty penalty, not flagrant foul, but an unsportsmanlike penalty late in that game. I mean, we might have tied it up. We could have won it in overtime. We might have had another tie this year, which would have been awesome. But I mean, seriously, it was just. I mean, I really felt like that Week 17 game we had something solved. Maybe it was because Chad Kelly was playing quarterback. I mean, we got burned by Nick Arbuckle there in Week 6. So maybe it was. Okay, so both of us taking Montreal. I like it. And I think the way I think I know the way you're going on this one. Saskatchewan at Winnipeg. Okay. In week 7, the Riders won 19-9. Joe, how long ago was this?
Still not long enough ago.
Really? Oh,
That
man.
one hurt because
Oh,
there
yeah.
were so many opportunities that the Bombers let go that game.
Oh, my
But that's
God.
how they were playing the first 2 months of the season.
Yep.
Was they were making one less play than they usually did, and that's
Yep.
all it would take.
Yep. But this, I feel like, was really the bottoming out from a talent standpoint. I mean, I guess this was the point when they were bringing back Lucky Whitehead, so that they at least had some warm bodies in the receiving core out there. I think this was that point in the season. And this was really, for me, again, this was really the bottoming out of the Winnipeg season. They lost the game the following week as well, but this was really the low point of the Bombers season. And pretty soon we'll have forgotten all about this game because they'll win the Grey Cup, right, Joe? So
Maybe.
Okay, so then there was the 19-9, and then as Joe alluded to earlier, there was Labor Day in the Banjo Bowl. That was 35 to what? 35 to 24? No, it was close. 35-31, I think, right? And 26-21.
Yep. Both of them were white knuckle games the whole way.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And yeah, but I feel like too, Joe. I feel like the problem with looking at these 3 games is that the winning team was catching the loser at their nadir.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because again, like after the Riders lost these games back to back, we figured they were done, and that's when they started winning. And the same thing with the Bombers too. The Bombers at this point had pretty much lost to everybody in the West except for BC after this loss to the Riders, and so it looked like they were done too. So these aren't really good games to judge by. Might be better to judge these teams more recently. Now, again, I was trying to look for the key matchup. At first, I thought
This game's
naturally,
going to come down to one play,
what play?
and we're not going to know what it is until it happens.
Okay,
'Cause
all
these
right,
2 teams
really?
are pretty similar, actually.
Okay,
I think they're very similar, especially when they're going well. Is they play ball control offense. They have the capability of hitting shots, but they're not going to go for them too much, especially early on. This is going to be a slugging match. One
okay,
team's
but
going to turn over the ball in their side of the field, and those points are going to be the difference in the game. Both defenses are capable of creating turnovers, although Winnipeg is a little bit less so this year, it feels like.
Mhm.
But Winnipeg's going to make it very hard to march down the field. They seem to play a very conservative style of defense this year, but they're going to drop 8 and they're going to make Trevor beat them. And that wasn't, and Banjo Bowl was, that's the whole way. It was like, okay, Trevor, come beat us, dropping 8 the whole game.
yeah, but that was the thing. That was the thing is that I remember talking about this. Trevor Harris was awesome in that Labor Day game. I mean,
Yeah,
350. I mean,
both.
he played a perfect game. Look. In the 2 games Trevor has played, he had 358 yards and 287 yards. Okay, in those 2 games, he had 5 touchdowns versus 2 picks.
Yep.
Okay, Trevor Harris, especially in that Labor Day game, played a perfect freaking game. It was just that, Winnipeg came through in the 4th quarter, which was something that they hadn't been doing this season
Mhm.
early on. I mean, and so I don't know. Maybe you're right. Maybe this game will be a coin flip.
Oh, it's going to be a white knuckler the whole way.
Yeah.
The two provinces are going to be just like on the edge of their seats the
Yeah.
entire game.
Yeah.
There's
I
going to
feel
be,
like I was,
and if you're going to make me make a pick, I will say Winnipeg makes the big play in the end.
okay.
But it would not surprise me in the very least if Saskatchewan was the team to do it. I would say 60-40 Winnipeg. Like they play this
60-40.
game
Okay.
10 times, Winnipeg wins 6.
Okay.
And they're at home,
Wow.
which goes to show that like that's basically my home field advantage is like, yeah, they'll win the 10th game.
Mhm. Mhm.
They only
Yeah,
play
I was
one.
thinking about that. Is that one of the interesting things that's happening here is okay, what are these two teams outstanding at? And in Saskatchewan's case, it's if you don't include the turnover differential because the Bombers just don't turn it over that often. Uh, Unless you count the turnover differential, the outstanding thing about Saskatchewan this year has been what? The run defense, right?
Mhm.
And the outstanding thing for Winnipeg this year has been what? Brady Oliveira, right? So, and you see these past few games, and it was like in every single one of these games, Oliveira had only between 40 and 50 yards rushing.
But
Right?
how
He's
many did
40.
they have receiving? They found a way to
Right, exactly. That was the thing. In the first game and the third game, he had 80 yards receiving and 60 yards receiving. So he ended up with over 100 total yards. And I can imagine seeing a lot of that this game because the Riders' pass defense is pretty good, but it's not unbreakable. It's not.
You
Uh,
want to know how I would game plan for Winnipeg if I'm Saskatchewan right now?
okay, tell me.
They they did the same thing Winnipeg did. They dropped 8 every play for the most part.
Mhm.
And let Brady leak out, he'd catch the ball, he'd get 10, first down, move the chains. That happened quite a bit both games.
Mhm.
Um, actually, all three for that matter. What I would do as Saskatchewan, probably 20% of the time, make it look like I'm dropping 8 and send pressure from unexpected places. Winnipeg has trouble when they have when I mean this is a universal football thing, but Winnipeg this year has trouble against unconventional blitzes. They had a lot of trouble with Toronto's defensive line both games. They had a lot of trouble with teams that are exotic. If I'm Saskatchewan, I'm showing I'm dropping 8 every play.
Hmm.
And I am coming after Zach
Hmm.
1 out of every 5 just to make it harder for him to decipher, okay, they're coming. Because then he can get the ball out.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you can force a turnover. That's where you win the game.
Wow. Well, gee, I hope Noel Thorpe listens to the podcast because that sounds like a great game plan. If Montreal takes on Winnipeg again, that's what we've been doing.
Thorpe is good at
That's
that.
our secret.
Like, that's going to be exactly what he's going to do, right?
Yep. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. That's our secret. That's
If
what we've been
I'm
doing all
game
season.
playing against Winnipeg, I am throwing the kitchen sink as far as blitzes go. I'm not doing it all the time because then it's easy to
But you're
game.
showing
It's
it.
easy to
Showing.
well, no, I'm hiding it.
Mm-hmm.
I
Okay.
don't want Zach to know where the pressure's coming from. Because
Oh
as soon as Zach starts having to worry about that, it gets harder for him to distribute.
Yep. 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 And again, that's what Montreal's been doing all season. So okay, so you like Winnipeg, but I mean, as far as you're concerned, this is a pick 'em.
This is a coin flip.
Yeah, this is
Winnipeg's the home team,
Yep.
and they're more experienced in big games.
Mhm.
This year, I'm
Yep.
taking Winnipeg.
Yeah.
Next year, if we're in the same boat, I'd have to wonder, even more so than I'm wondering now. Because I think Saskatchewan's going to need to have one really close playoff loss
Yeah.
to help them grow.
It's the
Because
pattern.
this is a new, it's not a new Saskatchewan team, but with Corey Mace, they're definitely leaving the past in the past. Corey Mace has done a good job
Yes.
being able to steer out of that skid they were in.
Yep.
And made this team, took the talent they had, and made this team a better team.
Mhm.
I think they need one where they come very, very close to build on.
You may be right. You may be right. I don't think that. Yeah, I mean that's the classic pattern, right? And I really think that's one of the reasons why everybody that
Because
BC was the vote.
I'm remembering Winnipeg 2018 in Calgary. They could
So
have won that game. Calgary won with their experience.
yes, yes, great example. Great example. I mean, I just think about BC the last two seasons. I mean, this was part of the reason why BC was the vogue pick this year, is because they had come so close the past 2 years, right?
Mhm.
They were playing in the
And I
West
wonder if
Conference.
Nathan Rourke had stayed instead of went to the NFL, if his experience in 2022 would have translated into 23 ending a different way.
Oh God, yes. Oh God, yes. I think
Because
we would.
that was VA's first time in the win and go to the Grey Cup situation, right?
Mm-hmm. 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 Yep.
It's
Yep.
almost like the Bombers got a freebie
Mm-hmm.
because they had taken Nathan Rourke out in the first time around. Rourke would have had the experience to go, okay, this is how they did it the first time. We've been in this situation before. This is nothing new. Let's go.
Right. 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 You got an assist from the Jacksonville Jaguars, basically. Who I believe was the team that picked him up.
Yep, the one
Uh,
good thing the Jacksonville Jaguars have done in the last 20 years.
the last 20, like since their existence. Right. Okay. So, you like Winnipeg in a coin flip? I feel like making the would be.
I would not be stunned if Saskatchewan takes this. I'm not going to sit here and go, Winnipeg's running away with this. This is crazy. Like,
It would be a shame. It would be a shame because I feel like Winnipeg's the better team. I
yes, but not
feel
by
like
much.
no, no, no. But yeah, I feel like Winnipeg has been consistent for longer. Again, it would be strange to see this somewhat newly constituted team just appear in the Grey Cup, especially. But I'll tell you what, uh, I would much rather see the Riders against the Owls than against the Argos. I, I will say that.
Probably the Bombers, too, because, I mean, you played like your second string for a chunk of that game and would have won if not for the act of God, right?
Mhm, mhm, mhm. Yeah, yeah.
Like, you're
Oh,
just like, give me some more of that. We'll be fine.
yeah. Yeah, right. Right, right, yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead. You're playing in your home field, and I guess this might be the true test, Joe. This might be the true test. Let's see if God intervenes, on one side or against the other. It's kind of a decent metaphor.
What is that goalpost doing on the hash mark? How did that happen?
Wow. Wow. Uh, okay. All right. Well, let's get out of here. Uh, we will talk to you next week after these games have gone down. Wow, I'm on the edge of my seat already. We're a week away, and I'm already on the edge. 6 days. I'm already on the edge of my seat for this, Joe. Joe, have you already voted, or are you voting on Tuesday?
I took care of that.
Oh, you already voted. Okay, great. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going absentee this year. Yay. So anyway, all right. We are out of here for this week. This has been the Rouge, White, and Blue CFL podcast, a production of the Shotgun Sports Network, sponsored by RoyalRetros.com. Enjoy the games, and we will talk to you next week for the Grey Cup preview.